We have Théo Arnulf, and we have Silvia Cîrcu Silvia, if I pronounce well your name, your surname. So I will do the quick presentation of your biographical achievement. So Théo Arnulf, you are a PhD candidate at University Paris 8 in theater studies. Your research explores technological phenomena on stage from a non-human perspective. You are also part of the Scène et Robotique project. You collaborate as a light designer and dramaturge in several projects. Occasionally you work as a stagehand and assisted, for example, Heiner Goebbels on his last performance. And you're also in charge of our symposium office. That's great. And you will talk about installation and performance labs for robotic diversity. That's the title of your presentation. Maybe I present now you, Silvia, and after you have your time of your presentation, as we start forum at 12:25, you have almost 15-20 minutes, so it's not a problem. Your paper, Silvia, is co-signed by 3 other the Professor Chen Chu Yin, Isadora Teles de Castro, and the third one
and Professor Abderrahman Kedar. Yes.
Yes, of course. Yes. So maybe I will present just your biography, and after you can start your presentations. Silvia Cîrcu Silvia is the artistic director of the theater company, dance company, Desiderate. You're a transdisciplinary artist, and you prepare your PhD in dance, creativity, and AI at the Digital Images Virtual Reality Laboratory. Your work focuses on dramaturgy of the body, new media, and notions like reality, perception, and transformations. You worked, among others, with Heiner Goebbels for his anthology of sound and speech. And currently you are an artist in residence at DOC in Paris. We are very happy to hear your presentation. Do you have a PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. Theo, would you start this panel with your presentation?
As you want. I think Silvia was ready.
Okay. Alors, so we start with Silvia, if it is okay for you.
If you want.
Yes?
As you want. I'm as it arranged everybody. So
go.
I go. Okay. Thank you. So I'm sharing my screen. Let me know if you see it.
Yes.
And also, if the connection will be bad, I will stop my video because I'm afraid our connection today is not working that well.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you very much for this introduction, Izabella, and also for organizing this symposium. We are very happy to take part of it. I'm speaking today on behalf of the team of the project Coevolution, Co-Creation and Improvisation Human to Machine. And my part will be the one oriented towards human-robot interaction through dance, and it's entitled Towards the Dance Co-Creation with Robots. So I will start my presentation. Basically, it will be a brief introduction in our research creation process, targeted around the robotic-human interaction. And through this presentation, I will approach ways of collaboration that we discovered through this experience. What were the challenge of staging the HRP4 robot within a multi-agent performance, and how we are currently searching a state of creativity through empathy. So this will be the main keys of my my presentation, and I will start first by presenting the project that integrates my work. So basically, coevolution, co-creation, and improvisation is a project financed by EuroArtech and coordinated by Professor Chu Yin, which is my PhD coordinator. And it involves several partnerships, among which collaboration between arts and science. So we have a collaboration with Professor Bing Yu from National Tsing Hua University in Taiwan. As I said earlier, our team, digital images and virtual reality, is represented by Professor Chen and also by Isadora and me. As well as interactive digital human team of Professor Abderrahmane Kedar from l'IRM Laboratoire Montpellier, and of course the Art Center of Enghien-les-Bains near Paris that offered the logistic support for 2 of our residencies. So basically this project sums up the PhD research creation of 2 students. Isadora Teles de Castro, which is my colleague, works on generative virtual image and ecosystem. Her prototype called Eve, it's an interactive virtual ecosystem. And she also deals with the IoT part of connection through the stage device. I myself work as a performer inside of this performance. And I also tackle the interaction possibility with the HRP4 robot under the guidance of Professor Kedar in Montpellier. So as you might have realized, or as I said it also, this project is a transdisciplinary one involving robotics, generative art, and performance. We are constantly adapting to a dynamic and collaborative working process, which means experience unconventional method of creation and continuously changing our original artistic intentions. I will let you see outcome of 2 of our residencies in Center of Arts of Enghien-les-Bains. We were there in July with Isadora and also this September for 2 weeks. And we did a roundup of some of our rehearsing, but not actually rehearsing, researching sessions. So this will be a current state of our project. Of course, it's a work in progress, so it's just to give you an idea about what we are searching for and how. And you will see images of Eve, and I will detail later the aspects concerning the robot. Oops. Yes. So this was the just a bit of interactive images of our working progress. And now I will get to the sorry. Oops. I will get to the more robotical part of our project that concerns my research as an artist and researcher. So staging a HRP4 robot within the multi-agent performance is very challenging. Our stage currently is organized in these schematics. I'm trying to point out the main interaction possibilities. We have Eve on one side, this virtual ecosystem that is the creation of Isadora involving computer shader and pixel shader algorithms. And we have some sound interaction that we're currently working on, so it's still on phase of development, as well as IoT and lights. And we have, of course, the HRP4 robot and the performer. The HRP4 robot, since it's a very complex development and a big provocation for our team, because we were like, none of us has a roboticist experience, but we were in turn developers, stage managers, performers for this rehearsal experiments that we did with Isadora. So we firstly worked on it through a virtual simulation, as you've seen in the video that I showed, and also through an elementary Arduino model that I built just to have a scenic approach with a physical interactive object. So all this dialogue and relationships that you see are still under construction. We haven't worked that much the relationship between Eve and HRP4, and also the HRP4 is for the moment only influencing the performer through its presence and movement, but we are aiming to a bilateral type of interaction. So in the following slides, you will see how exactly we plan to do this. And as I mentioned earlier, our vocabulary or the way to interact with HRP4 robot is through dance. I myself, I'm a performer, a stage director originally, but I got involved and interested more and more into dance through improvisation technique like dance contact and Gaga technique. So the way the body tells story, has its own narration, is something that matters a lot for my research interest. So in 2010, Kajita and other Professor Nakoka in Japan organized a study, and this study resulted in a HRP4C synchronized dance simulation. HRP4C is the female equivalent of HRP4. And we can see in the sequence basic movements synchronized between this android, human-like, and 4 female dancer. So we aim 12 years later to tackle this improvisation capacity of HRP4. And of course, there are a lot of, there are multiple points of view into this interaction that we are aiming for. For example, the stage directors, as it's well known and it was already probed through a lot of stage works that are discussed in this symposium, are always confronted with this theatrical illusion, or how to conceal and how to benefit from the machine's capacities and conceal them when there are shortages. And what we've discovered through our collaboration with the roboticists from LIRM Laboratory is that they are currently capable of emulative improvisation through random function, especially on HRP4. So, of course, as artists, we are interested in this possibility of imagining how a robot could feel. Literally, it's Umwelt, which is a concept developed by researcher Jacob van Oepstel, and that inspired the work of other artists and researchers like Simon Penny, for example. And Simon Penny, in his work related to improvisation of machines, details a state of improvisation known as improvisatory Umwelt, which seems, at least to the current stage of our project, something that corresponds to the way we displayed our agents, because it's related to the way that agents or actors in an ecosystem could cohabit the same ecosystem without having actual proof of the presence of the other actors. So as I said earlier, this UNVEL, this environmental sensorial specification of each entity is something that interests us a lot. And this might also trigger the possibility of co-creation with robots. And to enter in this challenge the adventure, we are hoping to use empathy, at least as a sensation that the performer can develop through the HRP4 interaction, and to go further, or at least to metaphorically through a correspondent in our artistical vocabulary, I pointed out something of type of how to tame the other being the unknown, the robot figure, the HRP4 in our case. And by using our stage convention, the way that we displayed the agents, we hope to understand how these entities communicate, what do they exchange, and how can a co-creation emerge. So this adventure started, of course, from emotions. Emotions, as you know, are very important in dance. And the type of dance technique that I am currently interested in focus a lot on gestures that are generated through unconscious processes. And by discovering that here HRP4 can be programmed in sequences of intentional movements, but also reflex movement. And reflex movement are something that can correspond to what we define very briefly in corresponding gestures of unconsciousness processes, encourage us to use dance as a possible shared vocabulary between humans and robots at the intuitive level. So this schema of Professor Minoru Zasada article towards artificial empathy is also reflecting and inspired us a lot through this research that we did on state of art on using artificial emotions. And of course, we can see that the process from unconscious to consciousness goes through physical mimicry, and focus on two types of empathies, empathy according to Professor Asada, emotional empathy and cognitive one. So far, we focus mostly on emotional empathy. So, of course, there are other scientific in the field that work around these topics. And in our paper, I've cited Tom Zinke, which also influences my work and research. And of course, in France, Marvin Belakid is now currently doing a lot of studies concerning artificial emotions. So we are hoping through our artistic experimentation to understand further how exactly could emotions be embedded, and to what extent by interacting with machine, we are more aware of our own emotions. So we are currently inspiring ourselves by cognitive behavior principles. The distributed intelligence model of Rodney Brooks is very important to our research. For example, the principles of embodiment, distributed intelligence, emergence, and situatedness is something that we are reflecting on prior to our schema of stage interaction. And this, of course, is a trigger for generating creativity. So we are somewhere in the continuation of works of world-known new artists like Zaven Pare, that is working since early 2009 and 14 on these effects of presence, as he defines them as gestures and movement that robots and machines can have in order to reinforce a feeling of presence, especially in moments when the machine is not interacting or mostly still. So using this framework, the combination of reflex and intentional movements that the programmers here are capable to program in HRP4, we are hoping to give the impression of a imperfect behavior through dance, and analyze how this impacts both the performer and also the spectator. But of course, before understanding how this will work on our stage and what might provoke in the spectator, we need to understand first the relationship between the robot and the performer. So this being said, we are currently adjusting our methodology because, as I said, we work in a dynamic creative context. And some of the things that we are aware of and we are trying to focus on is the fact that HRP4 is the most complex and strained agent on stage. His physicality is a key issue in our scenic approach. It is a real robot, not a puppet, not a robot playing another role. And of course, because of the strong cultural significance, type of robots are infallible, or we've seen them a lot in movies, in SF movies. We are hoping to escape this cultural context and bring the relationship with the robot to a more experimental ground. And because HRP4 is part of a research platform, this is this is even a more detailed case of interaction with the artifacts and with machines that are under development and constantly improving. I want to show you here a small excerpt of an unexpected event that occurred during this interaction with HRP4 simulation. So I was working on simulation one day. I forgot to include one of our libraries, standard libraries, in the setup of the virtual HRP4, and the result, the outcome, was very surprising. I will let you see it. So the robot started to move in a way I was not expected him to move. I was working on another sequence of movement. And while seeing this, I was very curious to check if it's sustainable for the real version. So I checked with my colleagues, and of course, they told me this is due to an error, and it's a lucky one for me because it triggers some creativitical ideas. But of course, we should work together to get a similar output, but in a more sustainable way for HRP4. So I'm saying this not to neglect what type of unexpected events and contingency can occur when artists start working with robotician and also on their own. So my simulation is still work in progress. We will see later what exactly we're aiming for. But while working with this HRP4 robot, we understood the necessity of a physicality in our stage interaction. And for the research creative session at Enghien-les-Bains, I was preparing this Arduino elementary model known as basically replacing the Animat, just to test some interaction possibilities. And what we discover is that appearance plays a major role in this type of interaction. It's not a big discovery. I think it's already treated in a lot of studies and literature around the robotics, the uncanny, and how exactly we are accepting or not machines in our lives. But for our conclusions and what interests us in maybe further interaction models with the HRP4, we understood that this appearance of the Animat being fragile, made of cardboard and glue, and also small, about 30 centimeters, didn't allow body movement and gestures to converge to a physical contact, which is one of our aims, and most expectedly generated like a feeling of instinctive empathy through this fragility of the Animat. But once we realized that, we were wondering how exactly HRP4 behaving in the same manner could in the performer similar empathy reaction. Could its physical characteristic like height 151 centimeter and weight 39 kilos, because of the fact they are very similar with the ones of the performer, could play a role in this complicity that we try to establish with it. So we will set up some behavior and movement sequence for HRP4 inspired by some work already done by Michel Brett and Allard Berthoz, which were in 2005 already interacting with intelligent dancing figures, but virtual ones, searching for a non-explicitly programmed behavior type. So we are still trying to understand what role appearance plays and how exactly we can combine this factor with other interaction possibilities. And of course, movement is the key or the factor that influences the most, since it's a dance interaction. I will let you see slowly some interaction possibilities with the animate while I'm talking about the movement of HRP4. And through this, I refer to an article of Professor Elizabeth Jochum and Ken Goldberg in 2016 that focused on the feeling of awareness and of the uncanny, and the way that movement can reinforce this feeling of uncanny. And to this extent, Ken Goldberg refers to the outdated graphic of the uncanny value of Professor Mori. And in 2012, Professor Mori reactualized this graph and actually stressed the importance of movement for the feeling of uncanny. And we are using these references to further understand how exactly this dance interaction could stress these effects. So one of our simulations, the one that you see in our video of presentation in the beginning, is focusing on interaction through synchronized movements, but also reflex. I didn't define them, but they are the correspondent of this movement that are inconsistent, as Salvatore said, or they're reflecting more unconscious processes. And we are currently trying to test them on dance. So there is a video just about some interaction that we did. In this sequence, the HRP4 virtual robot was teleoperated by Isadora doing our improvisation. I programmed a basic sequence of the robot just moving his center of mass from right to left, which is corresponding to a slow dance. And Isadora was manipulating some of his joints, which I didn't know, to see if I can accordate with, if I can still maintain the synchronized sequence. And to my surprise, as being a performer, I could easily anticipate which joints were moving, having my peripheral view activated. And it gave a feeling of complicity, of interaction, this type of experiment. So this is the almost final slide of my presentation. Is just referring to the way creativity is research, co-creation is research through our experiments, using empathy as a key factor. As I said, we started our human robot research focusing on cognitive robotics behavior and using the model of Rodney Brooks to emerge creativity. And then through the control framework and the experiments that we did with the virtual HRP4 and with the elementary model, we tackled some issues regarding appearance, movement, and empathy in the hope of, as I introduced you earlier to this concept of taming the other, to understand better our relationship with machines. So for our conclusions, just to stress some of the things that we understood so far, is that movement, mimicry, and similarity in design or appearance can facilitate interest in the robot on stage, and technical constraints as well as contingencies are generally catalysts for understanding a better collaboration between human and machine, as well as performance feeling of empathy can maintain complicity on stage. This was probed through the interaction I did with the animate, when even by moments when, for example, the animate's battery went off, by knowing that this can happen, I maintained the feeling, the illusion of complicity, and integrate this fact in our stage narration through that exercise of improvisation. And also the most important one is that the performer should have a prior knowledge of robots functionality. And this is where the part where Professor Kedar's support and guidance is very important for us, for understanding how exactly we should work with the HRP4 robot. So next phases of our projects is understanding the difference between working with a real HRP4 and a virtual one, identifying the most robust sequence for valorizing HRP4 movement based on this combination of reflex and intentional movement, and clarifying to what extent the feeling of empathy towards the robot play a central role in establishing co-creative interaction. thank you for your attention. It was all for my presentation. As I pointed out through my slides, the taming of the other is still a work in progress. If you want more details about our ongoing projects, we have an Instagram page and also the Euro Artec page where the next news about the project will be communicated. Thank you. And if you have questions, I would be happy to answer.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah. Oops.
Yes.
We can start the presentation of Theo. And if we have time in the end of, do you have echo also?
Yeah, you have a feedback.
Yeah, that's
Me? Sorry, I will mute just to make sure.
Maybe it's better now?
Yes.
Okay. That I said, thank you, Silvia, for a presentation, very, very rich and interesting. I propose to start the presentation of Theo and to prepare our questions on the end of this panel. If we don't have enough time, we can just ask our speakers during the forum. So you have all your time, Theo, no problem.
Great, great. I just started the clock. Okay, thank you very much. It's a very nice introduction. I'm just looking for my, yes, I'm going to share just after my keynote. But yes, I wanted to thank all the organizers and especially Izabella for giving me this opportunity. And I was also really happy that Professor Jennifer Parker Starbuck introduced this this conference, because she what she talked about and what Silvia then evoked in her presentation, all these things are really at the crossway of what interests me as a researcher, such as other types of robotics, connections to the other, and all the types of experience, should they be mimetic or not, to the humans or to the animals. And also the fact that she mentioned and Heine Goebbels' work that really interest me a lot, and such as Stifter Dinge. And it's really great that we can meet in this panel as two former assistants of Heine. All right. I will start now my presentation. Let me try to put on the okay, can you see it? Yes, great. So I'd like to discuss some of the interrogations that rose to me with 3 shows in the field of artistic robotic performances. I should remain intentionally vague about their nature, because the first one, Congrazia by Martin Messier and Anne Thériault, is a performance with choreography and media in a theater. Phoenix by Eric Min Kwong Castang and the Shonen Company is a dance performance intertwined with the other side of the world. And the last one, Black Flags by renowned choreographer Willem Forsythe, is a performative installation, part of a series called Choreographic Objects, shown in venues and galleries. These shows, should we call them, share key parameters to develop a broad approach to robotics on stage. I shall say that firstly, they all have robotic artifacts at the center. Black Flags, for instance, stages 2 KUKA arms right from a factory. Phoenix uses commercial drones and mini drones. Congrazia presents custom vertical metallic structures. I will show them just after on my PowerPoint. None of these devices is humanoid, as you could see, or shaped like a living being, neither like a mere object of the daily life. So my starting point is thus the robot as a moving machine, as opposed to, let's say, androids mimicking the human. Secondly, all these shows are written with a broad understanding of choreography that considers and organizes all movements, should they be human, material, or robotics. And one first question that rose about this broad view of choreography was...
Sorry, Theo.
Yes.
I think we only see a black screen.
Yes.
Is that what you wanted, or is... Now we can. I can see it.
It's okay because I haven't started really showing the poem. My PowerPoint will be quite basic. It's only illustrations, but yeah, you can see the titles of the pieces.
Okay,
Thank you for the information. So the interrogation was, how do these movements inspire and connect to another, like a human movement, a material movement, a robotical movement, and that will connect maybe a little with what Silvia presented. And a last acknowledgement here for my introduction is that the theatrical illusion based on mimesis and facticity in these pieces is either left aside, either within the robot itself. These robotic interactions are more about doing than acting. Yet, I should say that they take place in a semantic frame, or they strive to compose narratives. There is a story, often, or something being talked about. It's not only about acting. When I say acting, I say actual actions, not role play, of course. One could argue that we are not the same audience for these works in our perception of space and the attention we give to the narratives. The context of exposition changes greatly our perception of the apparatuses, depending if it's focused on the non-living, autonomous work of art in a gallery, or the human experience of theater. Even though these categories were shifted already and blurred, nevertheless, these robots' movements are central, I think, to the sensorial and visual experience of the pieces, defining the relationships with humans. My central interrogation then is, how do these movements carry a form of life? How in their choreography do they relate to the performers and the audience's bodies? And how does it diverge from the codified social interaction in other types of robotics? Therefore, how this phenomenon of presence and interaction is a laboratory to experiment a diversity of robotics. I shall start first with Phoenix. Should I play this? 1 minute. I'm just trying to do something with the... here it is. Up. So Phoenix by Eric Minkong Castang is designated as a choreographic piece for drones and dancers. There are 3 dancers that perform. They dance and play with drones of various sizes. You can see one here, and I think we can see the small ones on the ground on this picture, and one here. And we also hear testimonies from the Bank of Gaza, illustrated by projected cartographies explaining the omnipresence of Israeli surveillance and combat drones. So the wide dance floor merges with the widescreen upstage so that the actions overlap with the videos. On this screen is shown, for instance, a clip of young dynamic acrobats filmed in Gaza by a camera drone, and also a Skype window on a Gazan dancer. So the screen that you can see here and here is thus a narrative tool as well as a vehicle of perception, in that it offers views from above, shots of distant landscapes. it brings us in the making of images and modern perception allowed and transformed by machine. The drone's gaze, the internet clip, the live connection that, as we can see with Zoom, shortens distance while underlying it, and also internet as a tool for sharing and sensitivity. On the other hand, on stage, performers play and imitate the sound of the drones with 3 microphones. Do I have a picture for that? No, I don't. So there are mics on stage, and they, with the body, hitting their body, they imitate the drone sounds. I would say that this is a way to resist power on the semiotics of robots, because drones here at the heart of the media dramaturgy as are usually understood and perceived as a potential threat. And I would say a potential threat, and they suggest in a human relationship to robots several asymmetric relationships. So as they are experienced daily in the Middle East, these drones, of course, at the heart of the media dramaturgy, also are at the heart of the actions, and that's where it gets interesting. Because, of course, by their obsessive and persistent flight, their presence on stage is striking and invading. They move randomly and erratically on any hate, creating a sensation of lack of control in response to the dancer's immobility. They hover on the bodies on which they project wind and noise when they're not hitting them. So the contact here, the real contact, is wind or hitting. So it constrains even more the dancers sharing the partition to some sort of performative real-time attention. It's a two-way relationship. I would say to conclude on Phoenix that it uses the drones in a synecdoche. I don't know how you pronounce it in English. This process where a part stands for the whole. These leisure drones, to explain myself, they evoke the deadly instrument of war, the real drone, or as Grégoire Chamaillou would put it, he calls it the man-hunting device, defended by a necroetic philosophy. So what I wanted to say with these first examples is that it goes beyond parallelism between what is happening in Gaza and what is shown on stage. It's not only an illustration, it's a way to make feel the drones, the presence, and it's an immersion in sensations and proximity for the audience to the machines. It's some kind of modified reenactment of situations in the Middle East with a play on semiotics. So, of course, this first example shows more an opposition to the bodies, between robots and bodies, but it also tries to shortcut the usual anesthesia provoked by the instrument, and who's as you know, whose reduced black and white imagery from the capture from the drones tend to affect us less. I would say it invests meaning and art making and sensitivity into an insensitive machines. And of course, if it's not like a robot, like in the Golem imaginary, or I don't know, a Terminator or something, it does not mean it's not less terrible and hard to decipher and disembodied, just as a science fiction object. I will go on. I'm just checking the time because I speak a lot. Yes, I will go quick on Congrazia, another piece of destruction organized by 2 artists and 4 robots that you can see on the back of the stage in front of a cyclorama. It's black right now. The artists, they destroy objects and fruits, and the destruction turns into a musical composition in that each strike of a tool, for instance, by the hammer, as you can see here, is changed is transformed in a sound design because there are microphones. So the sound of the breaking of the things is into a fabric of sound by a microphone capture. There is a multimedia exploration of objects. One could say the artists are expressing the objects from their sound and matter. And in the middle of the show, the robots rise like for a religious mass with sci-fi echoing sounds and dedicated light. Here is a picture. And I will show a very quick video. So it's very dramatic. Maybe we can't see that in the video, but the performers that we saw, they sit downstage as spectators, emphasizing, let's say, on the theatricality of the robot's presence. And at the end of the show, the robots are connected to speakers that vibrate at each impact. And it creates a tenfold reaction in the sound making, because these robots we can see just there, they can also create percussions, and we saw them first as creating only sound and lights, but now the sound they create have an actual effect directly on objects. And of course we know that these objects you can see are very symbolic. It's like the fragility themselves. It's memorial relics of time, a symbol of preciousness. It's craftsmanship as opposed to the industrial world. So I will show just the effect created. And so on. So each impact also, as you can see, creates a vibration, and each vibration brings the teacups closer to a fall. And sometimes on some nights of performance, they break, or they are caught by the performers, saved, let's say, by the performers. So here again, the first relationship between human and robots in Congratia is, let's say, the parallelism of verticality. The robots are mimicking the verticality of the strike on objects. They are going up and down just as the hand goes up and down to strike objects. But they do it elegantly. It's a show of slow percussions. The connection is movement-based. Then sound becomes a medium when it's reintegrated in the loop of action. The sound of the percussion becomes a percussion itself. It's fascinating, I think, how this work ravels technicity and destruction, as it can be an imitation of humans or a system organized by humans that can be destructive. I think this kind of indirect relationships experience, they can make us think of the separation between our daily actions and machines surrounding us. I would say, for instance, the cloud we use are huge farms of servers somewhere in the globe, heating. The electric system we know depend upon aeolians, nuclear facilities, and others. The automated meters are linked to multiple sensors and computers. What I want to say is the relationship between the bodies and the robots are not direct here, but I think most of the interaction we experience in our daily life are indirect yet linked. I shall go directly to black flags, which is the last part of my presentation. It is specific in all these examples that we saw, let's say, in theaters. This takes place into galleries, but as you surely know, William Forsythe is a choreographer of ballet. He has his company for several years now, based in Germany, and many of his pieces are well known. He's working with humans most of the time, but he wanted at some point to work with objects, bringing the, let's say, choreographic qualities to objects. So this installation brings two KUKA robots on stage that wave huge silk flags in a 22 minutes choreography loop. And I would say that their presence is so massive that it calls directly to the viewer's body, in a way that when you enter the space, you are coexisting with these machines out of the context of, let's say, an assembly line or some place of work. We can feel their power and yet somehow not understand their codes, in a feeling that I would say resembles AWE, some sort of admiration and also some sort of fright. In other words, I would say that we are close by the body, but far by the spirit. At some stages of their choreography, and I will show maybe a quick example to see, the KUKA arms evoke a human arm, let's say freed from the limits of the bones, able to rotate in 6 axes without any obstacle, and also augmented to carry any weight. It is like a super body part emerging from the ground, a cyborg prosthesis that grew alone. The sound is very characteristic and very low, the electric sound, but the air and the wind are a partner in this composition, because any waving of the flag in the air, these huge flags, create curves and ripples on the silk, and the wind is thrown to the people observing. I make a quick note here that, as you can see on the picture, some people are observing from a gallery up there, or you can wander around the flags. Not too close, because of course they have security measures, but you can see it from many places. I would say that the installation offers a free perceptive experience, facilitating meditation and a state of hypnosis. Our interaction, therefore, is as an audience, as a public, is only, let's say, kinesthetic. Something uncommon happens with our mirror neurons, although the solicitation here is unintentional by the robots. It's not a solicitation that is, for instance, uncanny. They could wave at us, they could wave at void indefinitely. I think one can only pinpoint the absurdity of their autonomy, because they are deprived from any technical function and brought in the world of art like ready-mades. They don't carry obvious meaning, which I think is more interesting, of course. And I guess it could be considered as a window, as a projection for a non-human future, where they would continue without limits, like a Beckettian duo, or like me, if I don't finish my presentation, I'm already a bit out of time. But I would say it's a tragic yet beautiful condition of robotic life as future fossils still working. Looking back on these examples, one could ask, why non-human robots? And this choice is more a contrapuntal approach than an opposition to theatrical robots and androids. Because these art pieces, they stage relationships with machines and organize a perceptive experience, producing sensations between softness, hypnosis, and timor, I would say. They are partnering with more than humans. And Professor Jennifer Parker-Stardberg talked about agency. I think also what is happening here is agency. They are intermediaries with individual humans, but also with elements like space, like wind, like sound. They give the impressions of an autonomous existence, even if it's in an installation. Their relationship to the human movement reveals a margin. They do not exist to us as bodies without a proximity to it, without some sort of imitation. But yet, they have specificities, and it's hard to qualify them as just body of metals. They move, have attitudes. So anyway, no relationship here is completely symmetric. It's not about equality between machines and humans, but it does address the question of sustainable role of machines in our ecosystem and its absence of neutrality. And I think it enriches the vocabulary of possible interactions that can make sense for us. I think I will stop here to have time for the questions. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope I did not speak too much. Oh, maybe a very quick example on how they move. Yes. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Theo, and thank you also, Silvia, for your very, very interesting and rich presentations. We can open now the time of the questions. As we did previously, I propose to raise the hand like this, or to sign out your question on the discussion chat. So please, if you have reflections or questions, please ask. I don't see. Okay, I have the questions. Maybe I will start by Theo.
Okay.
When you presented those three works, very interesting works, by the way, I was thinking about how you describe these performances, and I was asking myself, can we use the same analytic paradigms for this type of performances as we use for theater human performance? Do we need to change analytical paradigms?
Well, yeah, it's a very interesting question. I would say that many of the human-robot interaction in a theater, let's say common theater, are based with the question of conventions, of illusion, which is very interesting because at the same time, androids performing on stage also bring this uncanniness, which I think is an uncanniness not only of it's weird, but it's an uncanniness of about the regime of representation. So, I mean, they bring some sort of performativity because just as like you bring childs or animals on stage, something slightly uncontrolled, something slightly weird, or just as what happened with the Rimini protocol work, something ongoing and weird. And I would say, of course, there are into representation, but still sabotaging maybe it from the inside, modifying it. So, but you can still use, yes, question of the, let's say the semiotics, the information, the gestures, the emotion, attitudes shown, well, in that we use usually in theater and performance studies. And here, my problem was, how do I analyze that? But it's not only about choreography, because here movement is key, I think. Movement and sound production, but also they produce sometimes their own light or their own show. So that's why I said I shift the theatrical question into more, let's say, an effect production question. They produce effects, they produce information, but also emotions. And I wanted also to show all the connections to other narratives, just as the Phoenix and the Gaza thing. So I would say it's hybrid.
Okay.
It's an easy way out of that.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I have also the question for Silvia. I am very interested by the collaboration with engineers. Yeah.
Yes.
What did you learn from them?
Yes, it's a continuous learning process. Thank you for your question. And yes, I in the article I detailed more how exactly the collaboration occurs. But it is very important to state that this research creation work is ongoing dialogue with the scientists and roboticists. And to this extent, I will refer to the concept you cited in the work around Professor Ishiguri and Orisa Hirata about the border works over the frontier, because it's clearly an example of this type of work where the social context is expanding the visibility of the artwork. We are considering our trials in an art center, but of course the interaction and the conclusions, observation that we have are also interesting for the roboticians. And at the moment, we can say that working in a laboratory is somehow equivalent with working on stage. It's an extension of stage, if I may say it like that. So it's very important. It's a dialogue. We adapt constantly. That's why even the intuitions, the original intuition for the approach change constantly, but it's enriching dialogue, and I'm very happy. And also, yes, it's very interesting way of working. I've never worked with roboticists before, and emerging in their laboratory, because I'm currently preparing my my scientific part of my PhD here, is a yes, very enriching experience. And yeah, hopefully this way of dialoguing between art and science can contribute both, as having both roboticians having their own observations achieved, and the artistic side enriching their own creative process through their contribution.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you also.
I propose to jump to the next room and to keep your questions to ask our speakers in the forum space. So thank you very much for this panel, for your presentations, and for the participations of our how can I say, scientists and participants.